Hello, I'm Chuck Akins, the host of Deciphering Digital, and today we're welcoming Micah Logan, a business coach, growth expert, fractional CEO, COO, and a fellow podcaster, to walk us through the nuances of building, implementing, and living out your brand promise. Micah uses a three-step process that he calls BOP, which stands for Blueprint, Optimize, and Position. But implementing a brand promise, it requires so many other things like conviction from leadership, installing those values internally, and continuously refining the messaging that is delivered through your brand promise. So join us as we explore how you as a brand can gain a competitive advantage in how you deliver your products and services and how to communicate and message that through your brand promise. So without further ado, let's bring in Micah Logan. All right, Michael, we'll brand promise. I mean, it's at the core of. It's at the core of so many things. And you even said in the beginning that it's a simple message, it's a simple brand promise. But I've found that either for myself or for other brands, it is not a simple process to figure out your brand promise and then actually integrate it into the position you take, into the deliverables that, whatever it is that you're doing with a product or a service. So let's go through this using BOP, Blueprint, Optimize, Position. That means we'd start with Blueprint. Walk us through it. What is the blueprint for developing your brand promise?
Yeah, sure. So the blueprint for developing the brand promise is essentially, this is the phase of BOP where you lay the foundation of your brand promise. You have to identify what your brand's core values are, and you have to understand what the job is, like Clayton Christensen, rest in peace, indicated from Harvard Business School. What is the job that your firm is hired to actually do? So what are your core values, and what job do people hire your company to actually do? So that's the foundation. And so what you need to do in order to lay the foundation is, number one, you have to know your audience. You have to understand your unique selling proposition, and you have to be able to start creating for your firm the ability to get answers to these questions, because there's no way that you're going to be able to actually deliver on anything unless you know who you're delivering to, why you're delivering to them, what method particularly they like or they want you to deliver to them so that they get the most benefit from it, and ultimately how to measure that deliverable and how to use your employees to perpetuate with that core value in that job that people hire you to do. So there's a few ways to be able to understand how to get to know your audience and your USP, or the job that people hire you to do. And of course, there's also ways for you to be able to implement this fairly quickly. But it takes the help of people who are both inside and outside of your organization to do it. So it's a bit of a process, and I can take you through how to implement as well.
Yeah, let's start. Let's do that a little bit, but let's start with you just said inside and outside of the organization. So you got the CEO or the visionary founder of the organization who, he's got his idea of or her idea of the brand promise, but inside, outside, talk us through what you would do with your internal team, and then outside is probably partners, customers, and things like that. But how do you implement the blueprint of brand promise?
So the first thing you're going to do is you want to create these brainstorming sessions, and that's critical to get anything done. If you're a collaborative leader, then it's going to be probably easier for you than if you're more of an autocratic leader who likes to make decisions and have people kind of report up to you. But you want to bring your people internally together, gather your core team of marketing specialists, your marketing director, your VP of marketing, if you have one, your CMO, and you want to get that group together and engage in discussions that reflect the business's genesis, the why. Why is a business existing? What's a mission that we have? What are our principles that we stand on? And what do we want to be known for in the public? So here it is, what we're trying to provide for the public or for our customers. but are we actually known for this in public? That to me is a massive gap.
Hmm.
A lot of companies think that they're known for certain things in public, and they're not. You talk to the customers and you start interviewing their employees, and you get 15 different answers for 15 different things that the company thinks that they're providing. This is the first thing I do whenever like I'm coaching a business owner or working with the firm, is we identify what it is that people actually recognize that the company actually does. Because if you think that you're being hired for a job that you're providing, and your customer thinks that you're providing something completely different, then there's a values misalignment there, and you need to kind of come back to the table. So once you bring that core message together and you start gathering that feedback from your core team of people who are going to implement this, then you need to create feedback mechanisms. So just ways that you can actually continue to gather this feedback that actually moves the needle when it's time to put together the structure of what your brand promise is going to be. So feedback form for all employees at all levels, feedback in terms of surveys and insights from customers and consumers of your product or your service. And then, of course, you want to get feedback from those in leadership roles in the company as well, because whether you are in finance aspects, operations, whether you're in supply chain, whether you're in marketing firm, every single method of work, value of work, and the way your company works they should all web together with what your company's brand promise is. You should be able to see it in every single job, no matter what a person does. So there's that. So the workflow of a company is rooted in the company's core values, right? So the next thing that you need to do is you have to know your audience, right? So you have to be able to understand who it is that actually, in addition to understanding why people buy from you and the reasons why they actually have chosen you and what it is that you satisfy for them, you have to know who it is that's actually truly buying from you. Do people hire your service or your product one time, many times, every 6 months, every 3 months? What's the data behind that? Ask your customers about their preferences, their pain points, their aspirations, their frequencies. Why do they come back if they do come back? How many are just one-time purchases and they've fallen off? And then one of the things that I've done both in my companies and with companies that I've coached is I've created focus groups. So focus groups, I've taken small groups of employees. I've taken small groups of customers. You actually put them together. So many companies work with the employees and the customers separate. I mix them together because I think that you get different kind of insights into the expectations of customers. And then instead of only leadership hearing what customer insights are, having employees also hear the insights from people on the ground who are consuming the product or taking advantage of the service is something that goes a long way. There's other ways, of course, you can know your audience that are more data scientific driven, which is you can use Google Analytics, you can use social media insights whenever you run an ad. There's always a lot of good demographic information that you can, and preference information that you can get there. But at the end of the day, you have to understand who your brand promise resonates to, and of course their why, and then you need to mix those groups together in a focus group. And there's a couple of ways that you can kind of structure your USP. So we talked about getting to know the why behind your business, or what is it that people hire your business to do. You can do a SWOT analysis, and try to understand your strengths, weaknesses, objectives, and your threats. Or you can do a Porter's 5 Forces analysis and try to understand a little bit deeper aspects of how the company interacts with the general overall public. But whichever method that you choose to try to understand your USP, you have to be able to ask the right questions. And the only way to do that is to get everyone in the room on some level, a representative sample of who your business is served, because your business, if you're in leadership, serves employees and it serves customers. And if you think that it doesn't, then you're missing the boat entirely.
No, absolutely. There are a lot of good pointers in there. I want to add to it just a little. You talked about when you talk about employees, I've found that it's really good to extract vision and brand promise from the leader in the leadership team. However, what I find fascinating is then to go talk to ops or customer service And, not only is there a disconnect between the leader and maybe the marketplace, you have to get an understanding of like the leader's vision is often aspirational, whereas
Yeah.
the brass tacks of what happens every day is often very different. Now that can flip. Sometimes you can discover valuable nuggets that you had no idea that a brand was delivering on because of because of a star in ops and supply chain, customer service, implementation, whatever it might be. So not only do you need finance and sales and product but I mean it is a gold mine to focus group the internal employees who interact with the customers every day. It's often the most listened to group, at a brand when I start digging into what's actually happening. So that's number one. You mentioned it, and I know in your implementation you talk to everybody. I mean, talk to the janitor for all it matters.
That's right.
That's how you uncover this. The second point I want to make is you left something out, and I think it's intentional. I'm gonna make kind of a jump here, but when you're thinking about your brand promise, it's not about your competitor's brand promise, right? Like so often I talk to a small business or a brand and they're fixated on their direct competitor, and what they're doing and why they're doing it and the USPs that they put out there. I often find that there's a copycat or a copy and beat. And what I'm always looking for in the brand promise is what are you uniquely able to do in the job to be done and how you do it and how you think about it. I don't disregard the competitor. And I think we're going to talk about that a little bit when we get in further into the BOP because the last one is position. But, I don't start with what everybody else is doing. I want to know what you're doing. That is your brand and your brand promise. And, later we can think about how to position it. But often it's first thing I go is look at what competitor A is doing, competitor B, and we got to beat them. I'm like, no, that's not what we're doing right now. We first need to truly understand ourselves. So those are things that I've found in the blueprinting. But you really I find fascinating that you brought together in a focus group employees and customers. Do you have a
Yeah.
story or just a quick take on the results of what happened? I mean, do you have it could have went terribly wrong or terribly well. I don't care which way you go, but do you have a story about a focus group when you brought brand employees and customers of the company together in a room? How'd that go?
Yeah. So I can tell you very quickly. So I was trying to rebrand my company. So my company, I've now sold it as of last month, and I was trying to rebrand my company because when I was going down the franchise path of my firm, I realized that I had to rebrand in order to get a strong trademark in the marketplace, to get to be able to actually pass the USPTO's guidelines and their lawyers, and to have one that was like super strong and protectable nationwide. And my current company name was generic. So I had to embark on this thing where I not only had to change a name that I had for a long time, but I also had to restructure my brand. And fortunately for me, I had a good way of how to take that brand and like move it across all elements. But I had to think about a way to first rename it and then to rebrand it. So I sent a message out to my employees and I said, hey, listen, I'm putting together a focus group of customers and you, because I want to know what you think about this branding. I have to rebrand. I told them the reason why. I started by telling them what the mission was. Everyone got the same mission.
Okay.
That I wanted to build small communities of fit families across the entire country. Very simple mission. And so I said, based on that in mind, as an employee, I want you to think about your interactions with customers. And as a customer, I want you to think about your interaction with the employees. And so here are a list of names that I'm thinking about. And I want you to give me your reaction, your first reaction. And I'm only accepting first reactions. I'm not accepting second or tertiary reactions. I just want the first reaction. Um, and so I wanted to choose a name that meant to take two things together to form one, because that's what the mission was. And so what we did is I actually did it on Zoom, and we had a bunch of people on, and I gave them the names, and I just took myself off, like from the view, shut my thing down, and I was just listening to the conversation. And some of the conversations were, well, I love it when there's other people in the workout with me. I love it when I'm able to come in and I get the support that I need. I feel like very close to the instructors, and like, I love the fact that you all keep the goals in mind. It was like a lot of information that was crossing paths. And then it was the employees saying, well, this is how I think about approaching working with you when we work together. And this is what goes into me even meeting you before I see you, so that you can understand like how I'm working with you. And then the customer is like, oh, you know what? That actually sounds right. That's probably why it feels so X, Y, or Z. It felt organized. It felt this, that, and the other. And so ultimately they chose a name. And the name that they chose meant to combine two things to form one when it was defined. And it was one word, because one of the customers came up with the thought, I would really like to say I worked out at this place right here. It was a one name, as opposed to having this long name where I work out, and it was short. And then the employees were saying that I would actually like to say that I work at this place with one name, because that's pretty cool. I like that symbiosis. And so the community came together and chose a name that not only was that had and captured the definition, but they also came together because they recognize that by using one word to describe where they engaged in as a customer or as an employee, it actually made them feel bonded. It was like a unifying, it was like a rally cry behind just one little word, 4 letters. That's it. And it was so easy. You put it in your pocket, you can put it in your back, you can, it's everything. And it kind of worked out really well.
You never told us the word.
Oh, Meld.
Meld?
The name was Meld.
Meld?
Yeah, MELD.
All right.
Yeah.
No, that's a great example of bringing together internal and external. And amazing that I don't know if that took 10 minutes or 10 hours, but amazing that you found a solution that everybody kind of bought into.
It took about a week, and I've had one of the comments I've had from investors from around the country, people that have invested in major brands, is that the branding was really, really strong.
Yeah,
they really liked it, and I wasn't surprised, because I was like, well, no doubt it's strong, because the people who hire us to do the work and the people who hire us to pay their bills both like coming to the same place.
Yeah. No, great. Okay, no, great. Let's move on. That's the blueprint. You gotta, however you go about implementing the blueprint. I mean, it's about core values, knowing your audience, unique selling propositions. It's work. I mean, it's going to take work to figure this out. And heck, it may not be magical like your 10 hours in Meld. What's next after this work?
Yeah, so now you have to refine your brand promise, because now that we kind of have it, we have an idea of what it is. And at the brainstorming stage, which is the blueprint stage, you're going to be like, in our case, I'll bring it back to my case, it's community, it's coming together, it's enjoyment, it's my third place between work and home. It's the fact that I feel at peace here as an employee because it's very calm. There's all this other stuff. So now what you have to do is you have to take that and refine it into something that's usable. And you have to be able to turn it into something that actually makes sense when a person hears it. So some of the things that you need to do is you need to start testing and getting feedback for these ideas, right? And so one way to take this is to grab a survey form, Google Forms, a Survey Monkey, and you can then take these ideas and you can ask a broader employee audience or a broader customer base, hey, do you feel this way when you hire us for this service or our product, or when you work here? And you can give them like a choice of 3 or 4 ideas. Do you feel this way or these ways? And then if you're seeing that the majority of people feel the same way as the focus group that were able to brainstorm the ideas, okay, well then you know that you can move on to the next stage. Um, and then you also want to gather feedback from social media followers. If you've kind of started to build a brand or some kind of reputation in the space, then you want to go talk to your digital audience as well. I always personally feel like your physical audience, if you have one, is the primary audience that you should gather feedback from, and then you should go out, expand it out. And if you notice, one of the things that we're doing is we're starting very small with a focus group, and then now we're kind of broadening
Right.
our application of this to more people and to see, do they fit in this sphere? Do they fit in this sphere of brand promise? And so then you can move out to the things that are kind of old but time tested, like feedback boxes and social media followers. You can do polls. Like every social media platform now has a polling capability where you can actually kind of generate this interaction with your followers. It does two things. Number one, it helps with buy-in because a person feels invested in the future of the business. But the second thing it does is it also ensures that your message that you're about to actually communicate in the next step is pointed in the right direction. So after you kind of gather the feedback, then you want to start thinking about delivery. Like, how am I going to deliver this brand trust to people? Like, how can I think about taking these brainstormed ideas, getting feedback on it, and then what kind of delivery are people going to be looking for in what I do? So are there any gaps between your brand promise and your current operations? So this is where you get operations involved. So, and this is why everyone has a role to play, because here's what we want to deliver. Here's what we currently deliver. You either work for the side that's going to make the promise to the public, sales, or you work for the side that's going to deliver the promise, operations. So are there gaps in the operational side that you can identify with delivering on this brand promise? Once you identify the gaps, if there are some, and you've brought your leaders there together to see if there are gaps in delivery, then you start developing training modules to ensure that every team member speaks the same language. And a critical aspect, I can't underscore this enough, when you are trying to create a brand promise, is language. So not just any language, the language of your company. Do you all speak the same language? Does everyone call this service or this delivery method the same thing? Or do we have different ideas of what this is? No, everyone has to speak the same language. And then you have to start doing operations audits to see if you can have consistent deliverability in that with your brand promise. Okay, so we've identified gaps. We're starting to develop training modules. Now you're going to audit some of the implementation of the training modules to see the opportunity to have consistent deliverability with what you just said you could do. So let's give an example. A hotel promises like a premium experience, right? They have to make sure that every single deliverability is ensured. Amenities, staff, training, housekeeping, all of it. I heard a story one time from a buddy of mine about the Ritz-Carlton. He was going there to stay for a conference that he was speaking at. In the memo of his booking reservation, he wrote something about Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Like they were like, what's one of your favorite things? And he said, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, the movie. He walks into the hotel. They welcome him by his first name. They give him his key. He goes upstairs. And on his pillow was a picture of a scene from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. It's a very small thing, but when you have that written into your deliverability module and you train on that, that reinforces their brand promise. That's kind of how you optimize. That's how you kind of start to begin getting your company in a position to see, is this something that we want to pursue because we have the ability to do it? Are there any gaps in doing this? Is there a reason why we can't offer this to the public? And you're gauging feasibility, if that makes sense. And then the last part of the optimizing it is aligning that deliverability with your business goals. If we deliver all these things, all these aspects of the brand promise, we've closed the gaps, we ensured consistency. Will we meet our KPIs in OKRs for the next quarter, for the next 6 months, for the next year? Like, can we consistently ensure that our business looks different from January to December 31? Are we going to meet our targets for this upcoming year? So you have to develop metrics around this brand promise and this delivery system. You have to ensure, if you're the CEO running the firm, you have to make sure that leadership is on board with what you're doing as well. And this is part of, or the CMO, of course, you would bring people in and you would say, hey, look, are we on the same page with this? Are we going to start speaking the same language? This is how we take your vision, CEO, and we put it into play. Like, this was your vision, don't forget. And, the CEO brain is always thinking. So you have to bring them back and focus them on like this task.
You got to focus them on laying that item on the pillow, which
that's right.
It's not the right phrase for it, but often in consumer products, it's that last mile. You can have a great product, a great checkout experience, good customer service, but someone's got to put it on the doorstep on time. And if that breaks, that last moment, the whole thing falls apart. So it's not, you think of all of these touch points, you got to follow it to the very, very end. And not everybody does. And that's where brands can stand out, is that you really you deliver on the promises that were made either digitally or, by a sales team. And that takes work. So before we move on.
And that's the gap. Sorry, not to cut you off, but that's the gap between a small business and a large business. Mm-hmm. That's where the trust breaks. And like, to your point, between a small firm who should I trust this firm? Mm-hmm. Because I know that every single time I order from Amazon, it's 2-day, it's on my doorstep, right, and everything is automatic. All the boxes are checked when I get my package. Mm-hmm. But with the small firm, it's like, am I going to get it? It's 2-day. I don't know. Christmas is coming up. Am I going to have the present? Like, there's a lot of stuff that goes through the mind. Small business owners have to execute even higher than large businesses in order to increase their know, like, and trust factor, especially the trust.
Yeah, no, it's a great example on Amazon. As you were saying that, as like, most people think of Amazon's position as the largest marketplace in the world where you can find everything you need at the lowest price. I bet if you do a focus group, that's not why people go to Amazon. It's what you're talking about. I went to Amazon last night. I ordered something. It was on my doorstep this morning on time. That's why I go to Amazon. All the other things were just table stakes to being the largest, to being a large e-commerce site. The fact that I can trust, because they do it thousands and thousands and millions of times probably, the package is on the doorstep. That's all that matters. Right. So, and we can get into returns and all that, but you're talking about they are a customer centric company, and that's the problems they solve. I think I read something last week that they're now the largest delivery company, even bigger than UPS in the world, because they figured out the logistics of how to get that package to you and even how to get it back when you don't want it. I mean, it's amazing that the coming and going of the package is why I trust Amazon, not because they have the best price. I mean, that helps. Right. But it really is that. So,
and all they had to do was be billions in debt for the first
right. So,
8 years while they were building out the infrastructure to get there.
Yeah. If we all can raise billions of dollars to go in debt to build the system, then we can fly a rocket ship to to outer space.
Right.
Before we move on, I want to add one thing that I found and this is for the leader. And this is something that I talk about, because the leader comes up to the idea as he goes to the focus group as a CEO or the visionary leader of the company. It starts with you. And what I'm looking for, and it takes a little bit of time as you're going through the blueprint and you're getting feedback in the optimization phases, you have to have conviction, and it cannot waver. Whatever you need to go through with your focus groups, your stakeholders, customers, whatever it is, I need conviction that this is the brand promise that you're going to commit to, because that commitment by leadership is what it takes for everybody to change how they operate every day to do the deliverability. And they won't do it because you threaten them. They'll do it because you're committed to it and you walk the walk and talk the talk. And if so often I'll hear a leader say, "We're a true partner." I'm like, well, what does that mean? And then you get down into ops and deliverability, and it starts to mean things like doing whatever it takes. you know, to get the job done,
Mm.
regardless of the contract, regardless of the fact that it's 4:45 and I'm off at 5. If you're a true
Mm-hmm.
partner with somebody and not a vendor, then you would stay an extra 15 minutes. You would drive something over to them if you could, whatever it is. And that's the kind of commitment that you and your team have to have. And to get commitment, you got to have conviction. So these are the
Yeah.
not the KPIs that I look for, but these are the things that are soft that I measure. Like, what kind of conviction and commitment does somebody have as they go through the
Mm-hmm.
blueprinting and optimization? Because it's the only way to make it work is to go to the last mile. In every
Yeah.
part of your business, it takes time. It can take years, but you have to design your service. You have to design your operations to deliver said product, said service. And if you don't think you have a gap, I'm going to get on a soapbox. You're not looking. There is always a
Yeah.
gap.
Always.
Always a gap. It could be
As always.
small, and that's what we want to do. But if you haven't done this type of work before, if you can't say you have made a brave promise and you have spent a year optimizing and integrating it to support your position, you're not doing it
Mm.
right. It takes time. But like you said, it's the difference between a small business, a growing small business, a medium business,
Mm.
and then a large business. It's that is it right there. It's the predictability and scalability of SOPs and different things to deliver that. So
Yeah,
no,
and I think that I think for people is don't be fooled, because it's possible for a large business to become really large on, for instance, let's say there's 10 pillars of operating a really high level performing business. It's possible for a large business to rise to billions in revenue or hundreds of millions in revenue on about 5 pillars.
yeah,
But when you get to the 10 pillars or 8 pillars, that's when you turn into the valuations that are historic. When you dial that stuff in, and we're starting to see more better operating businesses. But I can tell you, I've negotiated distribution agreements for Fortune 50 companies, and their process of onboarding vendors and going from accepted pitch to launching the product across the 50 states is disastrous.
oh yeah,
And they don't believe that they have an obligation in some respects to
Mhm.
vendors, but
Yeah.
the vendors are why they exist, because they can offer that product along with the customers to to gain their business. So there's that. But I also wanted to just say one more thing, which is 10 hours and 43 minutes. 10 hours and 43 minutes is the longest recorded customer service phone call, and it came from Zappos. It was a time when a Zappos customer and a Zappos employee sat on there for 10 hours and 43 minutes to choose the right shoes.
Wow.
And that to me is representative of leadership in the company and how they make the employee feel responsible for delivering this on this brand promise, no matter what it takes.
Mhm.
Yes, it takes a specific kind of employee to get there, but in order to even get to the kind of employee that you want to deliver it, you have to have these brand promises in place to know who to hire and why people choose your firm to hire. Like
Mhm.
it all goes together. You can't have
Yeah.
one without the other.
Yeah. So let's get to the P.
Yeah, so the P is position. And so this is where kind of the rubber meets the road, and you want to take your brand promise and now you're communicating your brand promise. This is the fun part, because this is when you actually get to implement your brand promise across all touch points, right? And so first and foremost, you want to train your team. Now, this means that if you're a small firm, you have signs everywhere. This is our mission. These are our values. This is our brand promise. It doesn't matter where it is. It goes in the break room, if you have one. It goes in the truck, on the dashboard, if you have one. It goes in the emails that you send out on a weekly basis to rile them up before they go out. You end the meeting with it. You begin the meeting with it. It's in everything that you do. You want to organize workshops and regular workshops so that you can emphasize the brand promise, the importance of it, and tie in new technology into the firm, a new marketing initiative, a new offering, a new service with your brand promise and why it is that you chose to do this. And one of the most confidence inspiring ways to do this for employees to leadership is for leadership to vet everything that comes in, not just based on the the fiscal responsibility that they have to the firm, but also based off of the brand promise that they're trying to service through the firm. Why do we choose this vendor? Because this vendor has values that support our brand promise to our customer. If you make it about the customer, you'll always win. I promise to you, if you're listening to this or watching this, that if you make it about the customer, you'll always win. That's the first thing. The second thing, this is kind of like the B item with training and teams, is always having electronic versions of platforms that they can learn and become more competent in. It doesn't matter what their role is. Can they be a better forklift operator? Can they get a couple or more train? Can you require training so that they get the packages faster, so that they can get it to the dock faster, so that they can scan it coming off the dock, going to the destination faster? Can finance come and get these invoices faster? Whatever they have to do to be the expert at their specific niche that all relates to their brand promise, that's how you have to train them. And then, of course, real life scenario training. So when you're bringing on employees, you want to make sure that you kind of go over what could kind of go wrong the most. Like, what is it that in interacting with customers and other employees where there's dysfunction that could happen, and how do you mitigate dysfunction? How do you actually repair it? How do you promote employees being responsible and having ownership over tasks, jobs, and functions that align with the brand goals, and understand that every employee interaction. Now, this is an important thing for me, and this is one thing I preach to my staff. Every employee interaction should reinforce the brand promise. Every single one. Everyone has a role in this. It doesn't matter who you are. And one of the ways I do this, now, if you're not a New England Patriots fan, it's fine. You should feel sorry for us this year. We don't have Tom Brady
Colorado,
anymore.
So you know what I'm going to look for that.
Yeah, exactly. But one of the things that Bill Belichick had right, everyone talks about the Patriots way, is that Patriots are up here, and then everyone serves the function of the Patriots. That's how you have to actually run a business. This is how business actually works. If you put said business here, and then if we all do our jobs, and then we all have our functions together the right way, and if we all know that our interactions are like a spider web that go up to the company, then we can reinforce that. We can reinforce that brand promise with every single interaction. Leadership needs to make sure that they're on that. Another way to position this correctly is to stay consistent. And that sounds kind of simplistic, and it is, but how you actually monitor for consistency is regular audits. You have to do brand audits. Are these functions that we've trained to communicate with customers, to deliver logistics, to overlook finance, and even in our marketing messaging, are our audits revealing that our employees are delivering a consistent brand experience? And then again, have a regular feedback mechanism to identify any inconsistencies. Are there processes that are broken? Because if one of your brand promises is radical transparency and a process is broken and people are getting frustrated, how can you ever say, well, you know what, we failed in this way. Sorry, we'll do better. And here's what we did to mitigate it. You need that data, that feedback. You have to be willing to do it. And then, of course, content creation. You want to centralize it to a message that speaks to what your brand promise is. And then everything that goes out in terms of public messaging on social media, how you speak to vendors, how you speak to employees, and how you speak to customers, they all across the board need to resonate with the brand promise. A uniform voice using the same language and reinforcing that brand identity. And then, of course, measure and adjust. So you need to have an audit for the audits, essentially. How have we done this quarter in delivering on our performance analysis of logistics, a customer service time, or deliverability? You need to have regular review meetings with managers if you have managers in your firm. If you're a small business, you probably don't. You and 2 employees, but you can still have these regular meetings. Are we actually hitting our brand promise goals? Do people feel like they're aligning with what we say that we're going to do? We say that we're going to be on time every time, and if we're not, then it's on us. Don't worry about it. Okay, but are you on time every time? Like, how do you measure that? And then regular meetings with your employees and your managers, and then customer satisfaction surveys. NPS is a big one here. Net Promoter Score. How are we doing? Are we failing you? Would you refer us to someone else? Or are you kind of iffy on how we say that we're going to deliver our brand promise? That's the positioning piece. It's getting it out there. It's monitoring it. It's making corrections. And it's, of course, making adjustments to what it is that where you're falling short. But the key about the position thing, too, is that you need to dial in your feedback loops so quickly so that when a link in the chain breaks, that you can repair it very, very quickly. You just don't want it lingering out there. And so by systematizing how you gather feedback and then having these regular meetings, then you'll be able to actually make these corrections in a day, in days, or a week, or weeks, and not months or years.
Yeah. You know, what crossed my mind as I was listening to you talk, and I'm a marketer and a business person, but my craft is marketing. When I think of positioning, I immediately think about positioning in the marketplace. Communicate through external messaging. 80% of what you just talked about was communicating both internally with vendors, auditing. Like that was a very internal an internal thought process. If you map and marry that with your external communications, like you say, put it on social media, watch for feedback. That's important. Too often, all my conversations are just about a positioning message that goes out to the market without ever looking internally. So that's something I'm going to try to do a better job of. The other thing that popped into my mind as you were saying that is you're going to have a high five moment. And my high five moment when I went through what you just talked about as a business owner was when a customer feedback came in and they stated very succinctly one of the core values that we had brainstormed a year earlier. I may not get it right all the time, right? You're always right. You're not going to ace every test and hit a home run, right. But that was a home run because for me, it closed that loop that we agreed as a team. We started to communicate it and implement it. And then it went all the way to the customer. And then without prompting, which means something different today than it did 5 years ago, they came back and they said the very phrase that we were trying to make an essence of our brand promise. Now, don't get me wrong, that was one big high five, and there were other times when it did not happen, right? We have both great customers, we have unhappy customers. So, but that was my high five moment. And when it happened, it finally sunk in like, wow, that was transformational for the business to see that completely feedback, over a period of about a year. Okay, let's wrap up here. And I have one last question for you. If somebody has made it this far, watching, viewing, they're starting to think about brand promise. It's a lot of work when you talk about it. I just said a year. You did 10 hours just in a name, right? But we got to start somewhere. If you're a brand manager, a CEO of a small business, whoever you are, where would you tell somebody to start if they wanted to work on their brand promise?
So there's two places. There's two places to start, I think. I think these are simple enough. So the first place you want to start with is, what is the job that people hire your business to do? You have to humble yourself, though, when you ask this question. It's not what you provide to the marketplace. So if you're a donut shop, you provide donuts to the marketplace. You provide confectionery sugar. You are a purveyor of these treats. But really what you provide are Saturday experiences with the family before they engage in the work for the day. An experience where people love getting your donuts when they visit the ball game. You provide a way for cops to engage in something to do on a shift. So are you providing just confectionery treats for people to enjoy passively? Yeah, well, that's part of your delivery system. But what you're really doing is people hire you because it's a trip out with their family. They hire you because it's part of an overall experience that they're going to enjoy. So when you think about what you deliver to the marketplace and your brand promise, that's what you look at. That's where you start. What is it that your business actually is hired for? Second thing, how do I want my customers to interact with my business? I know that I hire people for the experience of enjoying my donuts when they go to a ball field or to a park or at the beginning of Saturday and for cops. How do I want that interaction to go with the people who are engaging in this experience where they can actually eat my donuts? Well, I have to create that experience. Experience doesn't just happen. It's something that a business or a company creates. Disney, when you walk in, just doesn't happen by accident, right? They've made the conscious choice to step you into magic. And so if you view your company, for instance, like Disney, in the sense where you can create this experience from the moment a person calls, the moment a person emails, the moment a person goes to your website, and from the very first click, and you can actually capture the behavior flow, where they look on the website, where do they click, how do you want them to experience your business from the beginning? When they land on your website, do you want them to enter a site and choose an experience? Do you want them to enter your site and understand what it's like to, what is it like to have this service? You tell them up front. Like you have to really think about how you want the user experience to be. And that's where the future of business is going. In my opinion, I did a podcast a long time ago about this. I used to have a segment called Fantastic Failures, and we talked about Toys R Us. Toys R Us is now bankrupt and out of business. But what Toys R Us could have done to stay in business, in my opinion, was bring customer experience with the toys. You're not a product-based business. You are a place that parents bring their kids to play and buy toys. And that's a different experience. Because what do toys do? Toys work on the imagination of the kid. Therefore, your job is to provide the experience that children will never forget as they grow older. And how do you do that? However you have to do it in that store, that's how you do it. Like you give them something tangible to touch, to feel. You put a movie theater inside. You pop popcorn, let the whole room smell like popcorn. Have a Candyland room. Whatever you have to do to get the experience up. But like as a small business owner, it's two things. It's what job do people hire you for? What's the real experience behind what you offer? Product or service, that doesn't matter. And two, how do I want people to experience why they hire me? That's it.
All right. Thank you, Micah. Hey, I enjoyed it. Appreciate you coming on today and sharing with us. Great conversation.
Yeah. Had a great time. This is awesome.
All right.
I love talking marketing. Marketing to me is real fun.